Chair. We're ready to start the meeting. I'll just start the recording and we're ready to go.
Okay. Welcome everyone to, thank you. Welcome everyone to the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Policy Development Committee. Date is Thursday, the 17th of December. First on the agenda is apologies for absence. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Miles Langstone.
And I also have two other apologies. There's Councillor Peter Jones and Phil Downing.
Thank you.
Item 2, disclosures of personal prejudicial interests from members.
Yes, please, Chair. Can I declare a personal interest in item 4 and 7 as my sister has a shop in the city centre?
Oh, okay. Thanks, Joan. On to item 3, which is the agenda of the minutes for accuracy. Page 1. Page 2. And page 3. Any items on the minutes? The true recording? Okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome Paul Welf, Phil Holmes, and any other officers this afternoon. I should have done that earlier, I'm sorry. Paul, are you taking this agenda item on 4?
I beg your pardon, Chair. Sorry, we have to formally, sorry, I'm jumping ahead too fast. Sorry, I thought we were at the exclusion part. My apologies.
No. It's all right, not a problem. Paul, are you presenting this agenda item?
Yeah, happy to. So, Martin, is that okay? Yeah, I'll take you through, and then
that's fine, Paul. You proceed.
Phil and Martin will jump in if there's anything to add, I'm sure. So thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you again on the subject. It's been, I think, about a year. I feel like I'm in a confession. It's been a year since my last confession. I'm pleased to say that there has been quite a bit of progress despite various lockdowns and the COVID situation. So there is quite a bit of background there in the reports, which you'll all be familiar with, of the reasons why not just High Street in Swansea, but all high streets across the developed world really are suffering in various ways because of the rise of online retailing, out of town retailing, and really major changes in people's shopping habits that have happened over a number of decades really. And a lot of that is about convenience and getting places quickly and being able to do things quickly and efficiently. But I guess the opportunity now for places like High Street in Swansea, and actually I'd say all our districts and commercial centres in the county and beyond, is the shift towards a guest experience and a place to increase dwell time because there's places to go to do things. So increasingly people, and especially on the back of the COVID pandemic, I'm sitting in my house now. I'd much rather be out somewhere else with access to other facilities, whatever those may be. So I guess that the big opportunity for high streets is looking at leisure opportunity, good quality places to eat and drink, and other types of activity. So which in their turn will support a level of retail. And the other thing as well, I'm kind of referring back to the report partially, but all this content is there. It's just thinking about people's connection to place and how they want to use retail. Does a retailer actually have to be making huge sums of money and expanding into a Tesco's, or are they quite comfortable being a shopkeeper, making a certain level of income that's enough to keep their premises and their family going, and therefore they've got enough trade to make that work? And that doesn't necessarily need a major shift from supermarkets to make that happen. And if you think of the amount of housing that's now being created in and around high streets, with homes above shops, and developments very close to the city centre and the town centres and districts within the city centre itself, you've got more people living there with demand for particular services, whether that's convenience stores or other similar facilities like small cafes, which, if people are living in the vicinity, can be open for longer. And over time, and as we come out of the pandemic, the fact that there are more and more of these coming through mean that you're going to have that extra vibrancy. So it's not necessarily a massive increase in volume of activity, but you're going to have things happening behind those shop windows, and a perception that the lights are on and there are things happening. And some of the interventions we've been attempting to deliver are about that. As an example, the refurbishment of 4 of the Javati shop units at the moment, it's making those spaces usable. They've been derelict for so long, but actually having the lights on and anything happening is better than nothing happening. But actually it's creating places where people can test approaches and see what's going to work. So that's kind of as regards to the background. In section 2.7, I've listed some of the interventions we've got available at the moment. And I think the last time I spoke to you, I was hoping that some of these things would be coming to fruition. And I'm pleased to say a lot of these things now are part of the armoury that we've got available to help support people in trying to do activities to enliven high streets. So you've got catalyst projects like the Palace Theatre, which goes without saying, which is now on site, I'm pleased to say. I have to be careful with that crane tomorrow. But also then we've got things like the zero interest loans. We've got a meanwhile use programme running with Urban Foundry in conjunction with Ben Reynolds. Already there are companies starting to come through that and taking advantage of the chance to maybe upscale from maybe a garage operation or working in the living room to actually trialling some high street space. There's a huge amount of business support available, not just the COVID discretionary grants, but there's capital grants to support building improvements, both from Welsh Government and the Council's Recovery Fund. There are startup grants available, partly through council funding, but also with revenue support from Welsh Government. We do have business support officers in place now, Matt Callahan and Steve Williams, who link very closely. There are only 2 of them, but they are linking with Business Wales and lots of other organisations to ensure that there's a good level of support available. So startup networks, seminars on various topics such as social media or cash flow or business planning. So they're able to guide people through the process, whether it's an existing business or a startup, to get the best out of what they want to do. I think we've approved something like 50 startup grants so far this financial year, with hopefully more to come. And these are across county, and some of them are choosing to locate in high streets on a very small scale, but it is beginning to work. We're seeing green shoots. And as well, some of you will have been involved with, we've been attempting shop local campaigns in each of the larger town centres. So there's a huge sort of package of support there. None of it works on its own. It's the combination of those things being available, which in turn will help businesses already present on the high street. As well as that, there's quite a bit of green infrastructure starting to go in different locations. We've seen the planning application going in for the Dragon Hotel as an example, the roof of Morriston Post Office. So again, not specifically Swansea High Street, city centre High Street, but all over the county there are different projects happening. You'll be aware as well that housing colleagues are working on the refurbishment imminently of Croft Street tower block, following on from the previous ones that have been done. And we've also done some initial work on 2 of the Strand tunnels to get them cleaned and get the lighting level increased with the student flow in mind. We've also got in the background, we've been doing some extensive work with Welsh Government colleagues on learning more about what we can do around empty premises and what access we've got to particular legislation and means of access to premises, and using that as a means of persuading private owners to work with us on improving any empty spaces, and that is also looking very, very promising. I've mentioned there as well in section 3 the actions that are listed in the COVID recovery plan that you saw last year. And please, there's we've actually increased on the number of startup bursaries that I've mentioned there. I think I've just covered all that in what I just said. Yeah, and I mentioned Zavati. It was derelict the last time I spoke to you. 4 of the units are now lights on, Wi-Fi enabled, and almost ready to go. Yeah, I think those are the highlights. I'm sure you'll have questions, but in terms of the broad shape of the package of measures that are going in, without going into massive detail, there's more support there than we've had before, and the responses from business and community are very positive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Martin, nothing? You wouldn't want to say anything above that?
No, thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to that. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, cheers, Mark. Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. If I can, just raise perhaps some points with Paul, if you can, if possible. How are we marketing High Street? Because as you mentioned about Davati, why I say that, because the railway station is in High Street, and then you come out of High Street at the station, and you then come more or less get on the gateway into the city centre. High Street, as well, as you mentioned about lots of shops and that, we're trying to we've lost business there. But what I would say, what incentives? I know you mentioned the admin support with business and that, but is the business rates actually deterring some businesses and perhaps taking that little extra step? And as I was saying, but also what with High Street as well, because it backs onto Park Towie and there's free parking down there as well to a degree. That's obviously could be a bit of an issue for us with High Street. Because as you mentioned yourself, we've got a high population now of purposeful student accommodation, so the footfall is going to vastly increase on that area up there. And last point, Paul, if you don't mind, is there any ideas that we can learn from what we've done in Wine Street that we could perhaps tap into High Street to obviously help it along?
Okay, yeah, happy to take those, Chair. So marketing, I think I can tell you confidently that whenever we get inquiries from different businesses about places to locate, whether that's working with the Business Improvement District, I know Russell has spoken recently, and I've got Sue Woodward in my team working on inward investment, we make sure that people are aware of all the options that are available, which include locations on High Street. So we don't exclude any part of the city, and we do keep an active look at what location is going to make sense for people, and quite a few organisations that do come through places there are of interest. So it is partly about making sure that the spaces are fit for purpose. But you might have noticed, for example, Mackworth Court, that's in Coastal's ownership, they did have one large unit on the ground floor of that building. We supported them to split that into, I think, 3 or maybe 4 units, and since it's been made smaller into smaller units, it's filled during the pandemic. So yeah, it doesn't have a sort of specific sort of marketing, but I guess as time goes on and community engagement at High Street itself, working with community safety, there is community engagement going on, but it's happening at lots of different levels, so it's not excluded, maybe not a specific package, but it is being covered. The business rates, obviously, up to the end of the financial year, certainly we've got there's complete relief in place, and that's partly where, once it kicks back in, that's part of the reason for the Meanwhile programme. So the Meanwhile Use programme basically means that a private landlord, or ourselves even, utilities costs and rates are covered by that grant support, but rent would need to be waived. So it doesn't pay for rental, but it does mean that a building is kept warm, and the lights are kept on, and somebody can try it out for relatively low cost. If they're successful, then they could possibly stay in that premises and actually start paying full rates and paying full rent as they develop, assuming that the business venture is successful. So it's kind of like a stepping stone approach. I know there's a whole other discussion about business rates, but as well, smaller units and smaller companies are eligible for successive levels of relief as well. So again, smaller units, which seems to be quite in demand, from what colleagues in, for example, Coastal tell me, that the smaller artisan type setups artists and others looking for smaller spaces which are lower cost and therefore don't incur the rates. Student footfall, you're absolutely right. The High Street really is the convergence of probably, several student blocks either under construction or already in place, and that in itself is going to add to the vibrancy, and that's part of the reason for improving lighting and cleaning. For example, the tunnels that remain as the main access through from certainly St David's Roost, over Distributor, Mariner Street up to the station. Further things we could probably look at there, but as an initial, that has been done as an emergency measure. But also, you're right to mention Wine Street, and I guess over time there will be opportunities to look at further public realm schemes in the vicinity. It's one step at a time, and obviously the Palace redevelopment itself is a major step forward. But yes, we're going to need to do complementary things. And I know I've mentioned there's some resurfacing mentioned already that's been looked at, but potential for green infrastructure and other such things. There is sort of grant support available to do that, so we will be looking at that in due course. Yeah, absolutely. Hope that covers it.
Yes, that's fine as well. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Sorry about the dog barking. Another piece of paper go past the window. I'm sorry. June?
Yeah, firstly, can I thank Paul and the staff for the work they've done during the difficult time. I'm pleased to see so much has been done. Have the police been supportive of any of the work that we've done in High Street?
I don't have direct detail on that. My colleague Paul Thomas would be better placed to advise, but I know he does work closely with them, and they are aware and supportive, certainly, of what's going on. And part of the thing as well is obviously we know the difficulties of High Street, and that is part of the reason for the work that we've been doing, and providing genuine alternatives for people as well that are easy to access. Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not 100% clear on the detail, but I do know that colleagues in the resilience team do have regular dialogue along with city centre staff through the MARAC arrangements with the multidisciplinary group in terms of, what they will be doing from a policing point of view, but also from a community support and third sector. So that arrangement works well. I think we probably all would like to see it grow and be able to do more. And I think our part of the bargain, I think, is when we've really had those discussions is, look, we will do our best to take care of the public realm. We'll do our best to improve the environment, improve the buildings, and, hopefully then other partners will step up to the plate in terms of their role and their involvement. I was just going to add one other point, if I may, Chair. Obviously, we've got the works progressing in terms of the final designs for Croft Street in terms of the flats, and there will be a further opportunity during the development of that to look at wider public realm towards the top end of High Street as well. And that does link to some potential future opportunities as well regarding sort of junction remodelling on the highway. So it seems to be lots of small pieces in one very big jigsaw. There isn't one single thing that we would do that would make the overall improvement. But I think the direction of travel, and I think the reference to the acquisition of the shops and the population of the shops in conjunction with third sector and other groups really demonstrates a commitment both of the council and actually of a number of other groups who want to be based in High Street, which is great. And I think it's about harnessing that enthusiasm and making sure we can continue to grow that momentum.
Thanks, Martin. No other questions? Paul, what's happening with the lower lamb? Could you, there's nothing seems to be happening with that building?
There is, I'm pleased to say, Chair. It's currently acting as the site office for the Palace Theatre. So, and I have to say, it's useful in a sense that is in itself creating footfall, and subject to what uses may go into the shop units, one of which might well be some kind of cafe use. That there's been interest from the community engagement in people starting up small food businesses. So we've got a ready-made queue forming of people that might well want to buy a bacon sandwich or a vegetarian alternative. So yeah, that is actually, that it may not look like it, but it is in use as the site office. So it's in active use now.
Good.
As a temporary meanwhile use, I should add.
Right on. Thanks, Paul. Martin?
Yeah, just to extend on that, Chair, the intention would be then is to follow on with that continued meanwhile use and use that as site offices for the development, the housing development works across Street. So that would then follow on from that, and then depending on, I guess, the usage requirements for a building, it's not the prettiest of buildings, but it is in a good location. But no decisions have been made about the future of that building. Well, we'll use it for the current uses. It actually has worked quite well in terms of that meanwhile use, because the Palace Theatre development is on a very small footprint. But actually having contractors and suppliers walking up and down High Street back and forth to the offices have helped that footfall and that visibility. And we think the same thing will apply when we do the housing development as well. So it's likely to be a couple of years away before we make any final decision on that, but at least it's been brought back into use in the short term.
Thanks, Martin. Any other questions? Me personally, I find it very encouraging and reassuring with the although we have some empty units there, the plans are in hand and to fill these empty spaces, albeit if it takes a couple of years, as you state in the report, Paul.
Yeah.
But hey, when in Rome, when Rome wasn't built in a day, was it? So it is very encouraging. And as you stated in 2.7, it's good to see an extensive range of tools for not just High Street, but as you stated again in your report, the wider part of Swansea. It is very encouraging. My iPad had gone off for a minute. So where are we? Sorry. But boys and girls, this is just for information. So as far as I'm concerned, we just note this and fetch it back sometime in the next year, 22-23, end of 22-23.
No, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Go on to item number 6, which is the exclusion of the public.
Chair, we've got the work plan for.
Sorry, yeah, Miss Sam, we got the work plan next.
Yes, Chair, it's pretty straightforward. Next meeting is in March, and we have 17th of March street lighting policy and the annual report.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody happy with that? Now we go on to the agenda item 6.
Chair. Apologies, Chair, to interrupt you. Can I just make a point on the annual report? Because obviously it's the end of the term of office. What I was going to suggest in that annual report is, as well as outlining the progress that has been made on the various policy areas during the course of this year, I'm not sure we'll be able to put a draft programme for the committee for next year, because it'll be for the new committee, new council and new committee to therefore decide that programme. But what, if it helps, I was intending to do was to perhaps list the areas of further work that have come up during the course of this year's committee discussions. And whilst you may not be able to formally approve those or put them into a sort of calendar, at least it would give officers a good indication that the current committee have in terms of what next year's programme may look like. So it'll be a bit less specific than it might have been in previous years. So, but I'll share that with you, Chair and Vice Chair, in advance of the next meeting anyway.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Now we go on to agenda item 6 finally. Exclusion of the public.
I move exclusion, Chair.
Okay. And then it's back to you again, Paul. With
Sorry to interrupt you, Chair. Can I just make sure the live stream is stopped and the recording stopped? So